combat the pressures of today's high-stress, high-performance lifestyle, many people are turning to a variety of anti-aging, longevity and performance-boosting techniques and treatments to try and get the most out of their time here on the planet. One of the more exciting treatments emerging in this field is not actually something new at all. It's based on a molecule that exists in every single cell in every single person on the planet, and it's called NAD. NAD stands for Nicotinamide Adenine Dinucleotide. This molecule is most commonly known as a very important part of the process that helps the cells in your body create energy. Lately, we're also starting to see how this little molecule is involved in working with a set of proteins called sirtuins, which are important for activating and deactivating many of the genetic pathways that control aging, regeneration, immune function, and lots of other important instructions for health and well-being. As we get older, the amount of NAD we have decreases, and so the body's ability to make this energy and control these genetic pathways also decreases. This is one of the reasons that things seem to slow down as we age. We get tired easier, we don't heal or regenerate as quickly, our physical and mental performance declines. These are some of the things that happen to our bodies as our levels of NAD drop over time. On top of this, the extra demands we place on our body, such as alcohol abuse, extreme physical requirements or illness, can speed up how quickly we use up our NAD supplies. There are several ways that we can boost our levels of NAD and, in a way, turn back the clock on the aging process. We normally create NAD from substances found in certain foods that we eat, and techniques like fasting and exercise can help increase our production of NAD. But these sources are usually not enough to offset the natural drop as we get older. The most popular way to increase your NAD levels in recent years is through supplementation, and the treatment being hailed as the most effective form of supplementation is IV or intravenous therapy, where NAD is introduced directly into your system. For today's podcast, we travelled to London to meet John Gillen from the NAD Cell Clinic, who has established and run several NAD treatment centres in England and Europe, and who has years of experience using NAD for treating addiction and for improving general health and wellness. We also speak with Tom Ingoglia from the NAD Treatment Centre in San Diego, who has a wealth of experience and knowledge surrounding NAD, its many therapeutic uses, and the vision for this type of treatment going forward. This was a fascinating discussion, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This is a podcast about finding answers to human questions, taking control, and feeling good. This is the Human Regeneration Project. Okay, welcome back to the podcast. We are recording today over in London, and I'm very lucky to be joined by some special guests today to discuss our topic of NAD. We have Dr. Sams NAD here from the NAD Cell Clinic in Dublin.
Hello there.
We have Tom Ingoglia from the NAD Treatment Centre all the way over from San Diego today.
Glad to be here.
And then we have John Gillen, who's actually hosting us here today from the NAD Cell Clinic here in London. All very experienced in different aspects of NAD and NAD treatment. So before we dive in and actually introduce all our guests properly, we'll just do a little bit on what the topic is today, and that is NAD. A lot of people are wondering what it is and what it stands for. So just a basic little nutshell, NAD is Nicotinamide Adenine Dinucleotide. And it has the spotlight has been on this molecule lately as something that's kind of new and chic, but in fact this is something that's hundreds of years old. It exists in all of us. If you remember your school biology, it's actually a very important molecule for energy production, brain function, immune system, but it goes much, much deeper than that. So rather than me kind of go too deep into the science of it just yet, we're going to get a little bit of a feel from it from our friend over from San Diego today, who's Tom Ingoglia, and Tom has a lot of experience in this field, both personal and professional. As I said, he's involved in the NAD Treatment Centre in San Diego. But we'll go to you, Tom, just to give us a brief insight into your story and your background first with NAD and how you kind of got involved in this world.
Well, I got involved because I was sick, and I really ran out of things, ran out of doctors, and so I started to a journey on my own to find a way to health, and that led me online, and that led me to doing NAD infusions before they were even really done in the US, and lo and behold, I got better. I had chronic fatigue, chronic pain, brain fog, and I was also accidentally addicted to opiates. I didn't really know at the time, but NAD seemed to have, well, it didn't seem. I mean, it's pretty apparent that it had a very, at least for me, it had a miraculous effect on me, and then that began my journey to figure out what that was all about. And as I explained in the Ben Greenfield podcast 2 years ago, that it 6 months later, a famous Australian longevity scientist published in the journal Cell that essentially this is one of the most renowned journals in the world, that he was able to reverse the age tissue of mice, and that was really for me a point in time where I thought I was on to something truly magnificent.
And when you say, do you mind me asking, when you say you were sick, had you tried other forms of treatment to help you improve from the sickness before you discovered NAD?
Yeah, well, I mean, I tried different vitamin infusions. I had trouble walking because the pain in my feet was so bad. I did something called shockwave therapy, where they do sonic wave booms into your feet. I was doing physical therapy. I was doing tons of vitamin infusions, hyperbaric oxygen, chelation, getting my neurotransmitters tested, as well as all the tests that are normally found in a more conventional setting, like MRIs and psychiatry and things like that.
Was that a form of neuropathy, or what did the people tell you?
Well, I don't want to go too much into my story because a lot of the people that had that sickness, some of the sicknesses, they're sort of this strangely difficult responders. And most people really respond. I think a large majority of the people respond well to NAD regardless, but the group that I come from happens to be perhaps a group that doesn't really respond that well. But what I'll say is that I had an adverse reaction to drugs prescription drugs that I was taking. And one of the, I may have had, I would say I had tendinopathies. I wouldn't, if I did have peripheral neuropathy, it would be sort of a difficult to diagnose peripheral neuropathy.
And the actual treatment protocol that you went through with NAD, a lot of people don't really know yet how it's actually performed. It was IV treatment you went through, was it?
Yeah, it was IV.
Intravenous, so directly introduced into the bloodstream.
That's right, and it's a long process. It might be 8 hours long. It has to be
over several days.
Over several days, yeah.
Yeah. And John, maybe a bit of background into yourself and how you got involved with the world of NAD.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here, Dan. I first became interested in the NAD in 2010. I'm a recovering alcoholic, long-term recovering alcoholic, been sober now for like 19 years. And I travel around the world looking for new, innovative ways to help the addicted people, and especially alcoholics. And I became interested because I started to hear stories just like Tom's story there. I was at a conference in Las Vegas. It was a holistic addiction conference. So it was more or less non-scientific, but more lent on helping people with more holistic therapies. This is where I first heard about this miraculous NAD infusion that some people were doing in Mexico at a one-time famous clinic called the HIT Clinic. So I was intrigued by these stories. When I came back to the UK, it was only a matter of weeks. And through a contact I have in LA, a very well-known addiction psychiatrist, Dr. Hyla Cass, I quickly arranged to go back. I spent 2 weeks there in San Diego, where I had the opportunity to visit this HIT clinic, which is in Tijuana, just across the border. I witnessed some alcoholic people receiving this NAD treatment from day one, and by day 5, what I'd seen was absolutely extraordinary. The progress, the acceleration of the recovery through the detox phase was really quite stunning to me. And speaking to the people after the 5 days, how they spoke about this clarity, reduced craving, in fact zero craving, ability to deal with stress, and general well-being and focus. So I became very interested, because I mean, I was looking back at my own first 5 years of recovery. It was never easy, never is easy for anybody. I mean, there's I see alcoholism as a psychobiological condition, and there's a lot of people don't pertain too much to the physical abnormalities. So from that point on, I was took by the NAD. I quickly came back to the UK. I had a residential rehab at the time. I gave that up, and I completely focused on, I must get this NAD infusion program kicked off here in the UK. And by 2012, I opened the first clinic here in central London offering NAD. Now, particularly at that time, it was oriented around alcohol and drug detox. Of course, like Tom said, in 2013, when scientists reverses the aging process in some mammals, NAD became of other interest to me. But having said that, the symptoms of accelerated aging in alcoholics is one of the reasons that NAD is shown to be useful as far as aging. And I noticed these are symptoms that I've seen, especially in alcoholic women, how accelerated the aging process was. And after 5 days, how distinctively, visibly, you could see the reversal in that.
So you could actually see these changes on the faces.
And you still see that today, of course.
That's incredible. And Dr. Sam, the two gentlemen here have spoken particularly about rehab and about alcoholism and helping with dependency. But from a functional medicine point of view and a regenerative medicine point of view, where do you see NAD fitting in?
Well, I want to link in with a story that John is just told us there about the visible changes in clients when they go on this. And we're talking about people, possibly chronic alcoholics, with metabolic disease, with underlying liver function, dysfunction, and etc. Only in this week, I had the privilege of treating a person with a critical disease, a terminal disease. And of course, I made it very clear there's no support for this. There is no claims that I make about having these treatments done. It might do nothing at all. But this is something that you always would need. People like alcoholics, people with drug abuse, they're desperate. And the best we can offer is the best of our knowledge. So that's exactly what I offered, is the best of my knowledge. And within 5 days, starting on a Monday and the Friday, this person had extensive blood workups done and changes in the blood, including low platelets and bleeding, etc. Severely bruised on the arms, the legs, the whole body, basically. And you would not believe it. The first time I see this in my clinical career over 35 years is that by Friday, when we finished, she had a physical change in her skin. All those, well, most of those bruises are nearly completely gone. There were still a few left. But this is the first time I had a clinical change over, a makeover experience using functional medicine. Now, these are, NAD is a natural product and is a natural element and is not regarded a prescription or a drug for per se, and it is something that is physiologically in our bodies and can be added into our bodies. But it has a very distinct therapeutic effect. And I think that is what's exciting to people like you and Tom, to actually see that change physically and mentally. It must be, for the person who's actually receiving this, a real in-body and out-of-body experience. And that's exactly what I saw again this week treating this person. Now, this person could hardly walk, coming in a wheelchair into the clinic, and she could walk out of the clinic, pushing her own chair to the car. Now, this is not something that somebody can just mentally motivate themselves to do that. She still needed the physical power, which gradually came back over the 5 days into her body. So this is again a clinical experience that I could observe and see. And that fits in very well with the stories you have about the addiction.
And I have to add, like, we see a lot of these anecdotes inside the clinic, but I think that the audience needs to know that there is a general lack of IRB approved or ethical board approved, double-blind, placebo-controlled research out there, or just research in general to verify some of the stories that we've heard. But that doesn't mean that these stories haven't happened. I mean, we've heard and seen and witnessed so many stories. But what I will say is that, then that's one of the reasons why I started my nonprofit, the Center for Research on Addiction and Brain Health. So it's a new semester. We have 17 people in the nonprofit coming in on Saturday, a week from today, so that we can document some more of these, to document patients coming in. And we've already been doing a lot of documentation, but to eventually just really put the research out there. And there has been research done, but a lot of this research was done in the 1950s and 1960s, and it would take some effort to get a hold of that, some of that research, if it is in fact out there.
And a lot of the studies currently of our knowledge about NAD is mainly animal studies as well. So we base a lot of our assumptions perhaps on how it works, etc., on current animal studies. And we extrapolate that into human studies, and the clinical evidence that we see there is the guy go in for addiction and he comes out after 3 or 5 days or multiple sessions over a period of time, and this guy tells his own story. Now, like you said, that might be anecdotal from a scientific point of view, but an absolute true story, a self-told story like your own, Tom.
And another thing is that, there is such a thing as functional medicine, which is when doctors are taking a customized approach to the individual and looking at them individually and what they need. And so when patients come in, they might not have the same protocol of, let's say, NAD and nutrients that they might be getting. It might be different from one patient to another, and that is something that frustrates the scientific community. And then also NAD being natural, it's very difficult to get intellectual property to have a sort of a business model that big pharma likes to have, and so that's where there's a lack of research there.
We talk about the positive and the anecdotal stories, and obviously you have a lot of experience with this, but a lot of people, the main barrier to this kind of functional medicine becoming mainstream is people are worried about the side effects or negative effects that aren't documented, as well as the positive effects that aren't documented. So in your experience, John or Tom, have you ever come across any negative side effects when treating clients with addiction, or even the health and wellness clients with using NAD?
Yeah, well, I mean, the use of IV infusion of NAD brings around what we like to term as nuisance side effects during its administration. But these can be very transient side effects that appear and manifest as slight abdominal discomfort, slight breathlessness, sinuses block. People report tingling and numbness in their neck. But these symptoms are rapidly and very, very easily controlled by the reduction on the rate of the drip. Everyone has a different tolerance to the NAD molecule. Some tolerate it more than others. And depending on the dose, depending on the extent of these, like I say, nuisance, but very, very safe side effects that occur, which then determine the length, time factor on the drip. Some people very often call me and they're concerned about the duration of the treatment. Like Tom quoted, 8, sometimes 9 hours. Now people have to remember that most of the research that they're reading about on NAD is addiction related, and these protocols are very big protocols they're reading about for heroin, benzo, alcohol detox, people with less severe conditions to be treated to benefit from NAD. These time factors vary. So I can have people come to our clinic here in London and they can be on an IV drip for maybe 1.5, 2 hours, maximum 3 hours. So it's dose dependent, the duration of the treatment. It's not always 8-9 hours.
Yeah.
We're using a lot of people come to me these days, not for the addiction use of NAD, but for general wellness, fatigue, and of course anti-aging benefits. And the dose that's offered to these particular clients is much less than we would use in a heroin detox, for instance.
Okay, yeah, well, I can back up what you're saying there, because in Dr. Sam's clinic, we'll probably be focusing mostly on wellness and regenerative medicine. And in our own trials recently, we all kind of had our own NAD IV treatments last week, and it was our first one, and completely different in terms of tolerances. And I actually experienced some of the side effects you're mentioning there, but like you said, totally transient. As soon as you turned the drip down, they went away completely, and there was nothing afterwards, and actually felt quite good afterwards. And Jess, who's here with us as well, had his, and he was sitting opposite me, and he was laughing at me because I fancy myself as a bit of a hardy buck, and I was squirming in the chair, and he was cool as a cucumber.
You know, NAD in essence is a biological form of B3 niacin. Now, anybody who's tried niacin before,
vitamin B3,
they will have experienced what's called the niacin flush, where you get extremely hot, your skin goes very red, you get very itchy. The NAD is like an internal version of that. So people who take B3 niacin and experience this flush, everyone experiences that flush independently to the severity of it. Some people, even like the effects of the flush, but of course, the reason that people don't use B3 niacin and all the great benefits that's got to offer is because they don't like the flush effect. The NAD is, just the same as a niacin flush, really. Harmless, but it can be a nuisance.
And in terms of if NAD is a natural molecule and we're using these IV treatments to boost those levels, obviously from a functional and regenerative medicine point of view and a general wellness point of view, we always want to look at the other aspects of lifestyle that we can improve to kind of give us the best chance of these treatments working. And I know, Tom, particularly you're interested in physical performance and athletics and stuff like that as well. Is there anything that you do or that you recommend or that works for patients in the past, such as nutrition or anything like that, or lifestyle choices that can naturally boost your levels of NAD and that might work alongside these NAD IVs?
I guess there's two questions there. What can you do to increase NAD, and then what can you do to boost performance?
True, yeah.
And I'd say to boost NAD levels, fasting works. We know that stretching increases NAD levels. Not drinking alcohol, getting better sleep. There's sirtuin-1 activators like terostilbene and resveratrol that through a feedback mechanism increase NAD levels. Supplementing with B3 vitamins like niacin or nicotinamide riboside or this no flush niacin, inositol nicotinate. I mean, things like that. That can increase NAD levels. Lowering your carbohydrate consumption is another thing. So those are some ways to increase your NAD levels, and really just trying to combat the effects of aging, because as you age, your NAD levels drop, and it's because of a molecule increases in your body called CD38. It's an immune compound, and we're finding out that this is more of the molecule upstream that might be a factor. And so the aging is a huge component. So just doing all the things necessary to age gracefully is going to be helpful.
Well, I think there's again no clear scientific evidence of this note that I want to leave there. But basically, what Tom says there, around the age of when you're born, the NAD levels would be at its highest, and then around the age of 20, you might have already lost about 50% of your total supply, and by the age of 40, it might go down to 25%. By the time you're 60, we're talking about 12.5% if you just follow that very general guide. All right, okay. But lifestyle, of course, makes a difference. Genetics makes a difference, and there's a lot of issues that can make that deplete faster or keep it higher. And adding to what Tom mentioned there about what can improve it, like the keto diets have been quite popular in showing also increase in your NAD level. Then the fermented food diets, they're quite interesting as well. Sauna, heat. Tom, I don't know if you integrate any of those into your advice packages or into your clinics there.
We here in London have recently, over the past year or so, introduced red spectrum laser light as a combination. Yeah, as a combination with the NAD treatment. It's just according to some science from sports medicine that red spectrum light can raise NAD ratio, and I became very interested in that. So we have a program now where we offer that laser light in combination, but rightly so. I mean, lifestyle is everything to NAD depletion as part of the natural progress. Now, if there's one thing that uses it up more than anything else, it's definitely alcohol. But generally speaking, if you're young, healthy, and have a healthy lifestyle, I don't think anybody should need NAD infusions unless they have a condition which is creating either oxidative stress or something like that, where NAD's been depleted in other ways. Because after the age of, say 36, that's when there's a really down drive in the NAD, just like Dr. Sam had pointed out. So we're using, and we notice the difference. We notice the difference on clients who's had the combination therapy and clients who don't have the combination therapy. Those who choose the combination therapy with the laser light, you hear more comments from them on the benefits. So it's definitely working out.
You mentioned combination therapies there. What about, obviously lifestyle is important, but what about a combination with things like your classic Myers cocktails and vitamin infusions like that? Have you experimented much or seen much difference when you combine them as opposed to NAD by itself?
Personally, no. When I started, I picked up the protocol which they adopted from the UC, the clinics in Mexico and the States, which included a Myers cocktail. Now, I started using the Myers cocktail. I don't use Myers cocktail any longer. We'll either use the laser or we'll use probably glutathione antioxidant. I've just dropped the Myers cocktail unless somebody presents herself with a specific blood count that they're deficient in some particular mineral, then we'll pay attention to that. But we no longer see it necessary to be adding in the Myers cocktail.
Hey guys, today we're talking about NAD or Nicotinamide Adenine Dinucleotide and how this molecule is used to help with addiction, improved energy and performance, longevity and increasing health and wellness in general. If you want to learn more about this treatment, or if you want to speak to somebody about NAD or other types of IV or regenerative treatments, you can get in touch by email on info@humanregenerationproject.com or visit the NuaCell website www.nuacell.ie. Thanks for listening and enjoy the rest of the chat. One of the common things you see nowadays and the kind of demographic you see interested in this kind of, and I'd hate using the words anti-aging or biohacking, but the kind of people you see are generally people who have an interest and who want to increase their performance in some form of either cognitively, at work, in sport, whatever it might be. They're not necessarily people who are ill or are suffering with dependencies. So with something like NAD therapy, is this something that they should consider or that will give them what they're looking for Or is it really the best advice to kind of sort out the other aspects first, the lifestyle, the diet, the stuff that we spoke about? Or is a combination of both the way this field is going? Because I know there's guys like, obviously Ben Greenfield is one of the pioneers in this kind of a field. Better living through science is his kind of motto, which is great, and it's what first caught my ear, and Jess and Dr. Sam as well, that there is a potential there to improve and enhance what might normally be possible through the use of IV, either vitamin therapies or NAD therapy. But in your kind of experience, you have a lot of experience in this field, Tom. Do you think that's something that people should look at if they are in general quite well and healthy? And one of the main reasons I ask is because we know nowadays, compared to maybe years ago, our nutrition isn't possibly where it needs to be as a result of, number one, just poor planning, but number two, production processes and industrial farming and things like that. The nutrition content of food isn't where it was. Our stress levels tend to be higher. Our activity levels are lower. So in general, we are less healthy. So this looks like an attractive option for people. It looks like a shortcut for some people, but as part of a bigger plan, is this something you would recommend people look at as part of an optimization of their health, I suppose?
Absolutely. And you know, no one would ever consent to be a fool. If I said to you, you know, I'll give you $1 billion, but I'm going to make, you'd have to trade in your emotional stability. You would be intellectually handicapped. You would be unhappy or something like that. You wouldn't trade that for all the money in the world. Like, your ability to have this human intellectual ability is so, it's so of the utmost importance. It's up there with time that you have on this planet, and that's what we think. NAD might be helpful with both, and what we see is that when people do NAD, at least with myself and many others, is that they perceive the world differently. Like, it's richer, it's more vibrant. Some people sort of compare it to sort of a psychedelic experience in a way. Maybe it's something like that. I believe, and we should definitely do some more formal research, is that there is that not only will people have cognitive and physical performance improvements from it, but also I think to some degree, worldwide, there's a worldwide intellectual deficit from a lack of NAD. So, you know, for example, I've gotten a phone call from someone who's in he's in Kentucky, and or no, I'm sorry, I think it might be another state, but Tennessee, and he's working with the government there because a huge percentage of the babies being born in Tennessee are being born to heroin addiction, and so this is going to be a huge problem for the healthcare system and governments, but the drugs and alcohol is a problem worldwide, and what we see in many places around the world is there's intellectual deficits in poorer countries, and it has to do primarily with nutritional deficiencies like NAD. So, I mean, the history behind NAD is there was this quote unquote infection in the United States, and there was this medical doctor named Joseph Goldberger who moved to the South to work on an infection called pellagra, and he had already worked on things like typhoid, diphtheria, typhus, dengue fever, yellow fever. He had worked on all the infections at the turn of the century, and he went, and the government had asked him, "Okay, you've done all your research. What is it?" And he said, "They asked him, like, did it come from flies or mice or?" And he said, "No, this is nutrition." And he encountered problems for 20 years trying to explain that pellagra was a deficiency of nutrients, and pellagra is a disease that's characterized by the 4 Ds: dementia, dermatitis, and I'm trying to remember the other one, diarrhea and death. So what we now know today is that this was severe NAD deficiency. That's what we now know today, and it's taking a very long time for this to happen. But over the many decades that followed, and Goldberger didn't get to see the introduction of niacin into the food supply during World War, into the Allies, niacin into flour. But when veterans came back from the war, there was a doctor, scientist, Abraham Hoffer, who was taking care of veterans that were interned in Japanese camps, and he was seeing that they were deficient in niacin, and he came up with this concept of subclinical B3 deficiency, and he eventually went on to become friends with Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, and Bill Wilson, when he discovered niacin, he had profound effects. Even though he had been sober for many years, he had suffered from depression, and he had felt that this B3 was. He tried everything to get B3 to be part of AA, and it was rejected. So there is a sort of history of people pushing forth things like NAD, and then there to be pushback. And I think this is one of those extraordinary times where perhaps we can push this forward. And I'm just trying to expand this concept of subclinical NAD deficiency as something that's necessary in our modern world, where we can have increased performance capacity by doing the substance.
And you mentioned the pushback there, Dr. Sam. Why do you think there's such a pushback against something which just, to me, sounds incredible and has sounded incredible from the very start since I started to look into NAD and listen to your stories? Why is there this pushback?
I think Tom already mentioned some of it, and that is the fact that the pharmaceutical companies can't really own the intellectual property of this concept, etc. It's a bit like the cannabis story as well. It becomes very difficult if you can't own that research and make it your own and make money from it. So I don't want to let it sound that negative, but the reality is things takes very long time in formal medicine to adapt to new ways of thinking, and what is lacking is this clinical evidence that we're talking about this morning as well, how to gather that and how to bring that into a level 1, 2, 3, 4 studies so that you can actually stand over the clinical trials. That's what's missing. But once it's there, like with cannabis, eventually the push will be there, and it's overwhelming, and it will eventually come in. I absolutely agree with Tom said, and I think the concept of subclinical pellagra, if you want to call it that way, is something that we experience in daily practice. Coming from a clinical background here, ordinary eating disorders, not only your alcohol abuse and your substance abuse, we're talking about there are known documented like carcinoid carcinoma, which is related to B3 niacin shortage. But just looking at our daily lives, I think there's a case to be made for poor nutrition, people with poor lifestyles, definitely developing these shortages in NAD, and with a shortage in lysine as well. Eventually, they end up with B3 deficiencies, just being very low, and that develops a lot of the depression on the clinical signs, which we today would put under a group and say, oh, well, you've got a psychiatric disease, and give you an antidepressant. The underlying cause many times might be something as simple as just NAD shortage or depleted NAD levels and or vitamin B3.
So when we talk about functional medicine, this is kind of what we talk about, is take a bigger picture view. And I know in the States it's massive, not just looking at someone's blood markers and are they in between the acceptable markers, well then they're not sick, but they present it for a reason. So clearly there's something going on there. John, when people find you, what are the common things that they come to you with? I know alcoholism and dependency is a huge one, but do you get people coming in looking just for improvements in general health, or how does it work when people come to you here in London?
Well, in recent years, there've been a lot of people contacted me with various other conditions outside alcohol and drug treatment. In fact, these days, the majority of clients who come to the NAD Cell Clinic are non-addicted people. They're people with metabolic conditions. They're serious conditions. They're people who come with Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis. We've seen a big interest lately in Lyme disease, and how NAD, in combination with laser again, it seems to improve the quality of life in these individuals. So there's people with some real serious neurodegenerative and metabolic conditions who's come into the clinic. But then we've recently, in the past year, beginning to see a lot of the healthy sick people, the people who think that maybe they're sick but they're not sick. But anti-aging is becoming more the mainstream for NAD. We've seen a spike in certain people interested in the anti-aging benefits. These are people who take NAD serious. You don't have to say much to them about NAD when they contact you. They've already done a lot of research. They're pretty smart people. They're people that's interested in aging healthy. We've seen a big spike in these people in the past year as the research lends itself more to the benefits of NAD and aging.
So these are the kind of people Tom would have mentioned there who are looking to experience life more and to get more quality out of the time that they're here, rather than trying to live to 200 or 300. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are people who has done pre-research. They only contact me to have the infusion therapy. Like I say, they're pretty smart people who have really extensively, they could teach me a thing or two about NAD. So the availability of information on NAD is becoming greater and greater every day. So these are the type of people that Tom spoke about. There's a lot of sports people beginning to take an interest in this miracle molecule as well. So we've seen a little increase in amateur athletics. There's a group of boxers trying NAD. So the interest is coming through all different aspects these days. Where, specifically, it was an addiction protocol in the beginning. In fact, NAD was first used many years ago in South Africa, a country that Dr. Sam knows well. It's where he comes from. Way back, 80 years ago, as a protocol for moderate to severe schizophrenic people. So NAD's not a new thing. It goes back a long way. It's just like in recent times with the scientists looking at it again and its qualities regarding aging and other aspects of energy and brain health, there's been a sort of renewed interest in it, like a renaissance.
You mentioned there a lot of athletes, amateur athletes, boxers, things like that. It's an area I have a specific interest in. What kind of benefits are these guys noticing, apart from what we've discussed so far? Are they actually getting improvements in athletic performance?
Without increased stamina.
Really?
Absolutely. And faster, better recovery rates.
This is stuff they've measured, is it?
Yeah, this is the report back on this through their personal experience. We don't have any data to claim that. This is just observation, experience they're putting back to us. But without a doubt, increased stamina in all cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's it reminds me. There's a well-known supplement manufacturer scientist. I was talking with him at one of these conferences, and he just turned to me and he said, when I do NAD, I could just keep going for hours working in the lab, working on my stuff. I don't run out of that. I don't get mentally fatigued.
Okay. And I know the first question people are going to ask when we touch on this topic is it a performance-enhancing drug? Is this something that's going to be viewed as an unfair advantage for people? Or, when we discuss it like this, it's clearly something that is a part of us naturally that we are deficient in. So you treat it like any multivitamin you take in the morning. But is this something that you think that we're going to have an issue with in terms of regulation in sports?
I don't think so. I don't see why that could be. It's just basic nutrition, NAD. The only problem with NAD to get is through the IV infusion. It may cause a problem as an IV infusion in professional sports, just because of the method of administration. But the molecule itself, I don't see that as being as an enhancer as such.
Yeah. Yeah, and you bring up the point there of administration. This is something, if you're having it done through IV, that has to be done by a registered doctor or nurse. This is not something that you go into your local beauty salon and have done by.
Well, here in the UK, you don't have to be a medically trained nurse to do an IV infusion. You have to be supervised by a qualified nurse or a doctor. But we have courses here on cannulation and phlebotomy, where you don't have to be a qualified nurse that can actually do the cannulation process. But of course, it comes by prescription and a qualified medical team. That's the way it's conducted here anyway.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you even if you put in a dry needle into somebody, there's the possibility of a major reaction.
Infection,
you know, I mean, so things aren't 100% safe with anything having to do with needles. You know, this is you're going to want, if you're going to do an NAD infusion, you're going to want to have someone who's experienced and qualified and trained to do the NAD infusion and understands the kinds of ailments that you might have.
I think it's important that clients need always to select their practitioner. Like in the UK, the regulations now just changed in September last year on a regulation, and there are now 4 classes, and nurse prescribers in a level 6 or 7, as they call it here, would be 100% qualified to do the treatments or run by a doctor, right? But again, it's about selecting the practitioner is very important.
This is not like giving a Myers cocktail, or this is not like giving a regular vitamin cocktail. NAD's much more complex.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a phrase that you used, John, earlier before we were recording, the party bags, and this is something that's become quite popular now with the IV infusions, with the cocktails and things like that, the post-hangover or the party cure. This is a different realm altogether.
Oh yeah, this is a completely different protocol we're talking about with the NAD. It's nothing like the party drip Myers cocktail infusion. Nothing like it at all. This is not even a vitamin. It's a coenzyme. It's a completely different experience, as Tom pointed out, with a obviously completely different outcome.
Of course,
but
yeah.
As Tom's stating, the clinical governance for an IV infusion is very important. It's not everybody can carry out an NAD infusion. You have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Especially with the side effects that can occur.
Well, I find one of the most harmful things to treatments like this is when people who don't know what they're doing start administering these treatments. The clients don't get the results, they badmouth the treatment, and then everybody suffers because nobody's going to get the benefits from it. Tom, you did mention there oral supplementation, things like nicotinamide riboside, NMN, things like that. Are these things that people can get their hands on readily? And what's your opinion? And obviously IV is a very, very effective way of administering nutrients directly to the bloodstream. But what do you think about taking oral supplementation and the benefits of that for somebody who doesn't want to go down the road of maybe IV treatments? Do you think there's a bioavailability to these ingredients? I don't know if you're affiliated with any companies or anything like that supply this, but what's your opinion on the oral stuff?
Well, my conflict is I'm a backer of NAD.
Okay.
That's my conflict of interest. I was just yesterday, I was with an nicotinamide mononucleotide scientist, and that's coming out as a product. And then also I was with a major head of a company that produces nicotinamide riboside, and we all sort of debate and sort of swing at each other thinking we got the better molecule. And the reality, and what I see as my perspective is that there is lots of research to show that these vitamins work very well, but I feel that science will prove that NAD, the pure molecule and not the precursor, is the and doing it through intravenously is the most superior form of administration. Now, yeah, does that mean you shouldn't go out and do it? No. I mean, if that's something that you want to do, you want to try nicotinamide riboside. Some people get some pretty great benefits. If you go on Amazon and you look at the reviews, you'll see like maybe 1 out of every 10 views, or someone says, this changed my life. When with a lot of the the NAD IV infusions, you see really happy reviews up in the 70, 80, 90% range, which is much higher than stem cell injections.
And
that I see. Yeah.
Is this something you do for life? Is it something, obviously you want to optimize your lifestyle and health as well, but is it something, if you start going down this road and you like the benefits, is it something you have to maintain forever to keep that, I won't call it a buzz, but to keep that the positive effects and the changes in your life, or is it a facilitator for more change? Does it help you make other changes that might kind of be a little bit more long term?
I think that for the NAD point of view, it's ongoing, especially after the age of 36. It's an ongoing treatment or adoption of a new lifestyle. I mean, we talk about BT niacin, but another important precursor for the body to make. You see, the body has to make NAD. There is an amino acid tryptophan. Tryptophan can be found in big, high energy expending animals like turkeys. Have a lot of tryptophan. So turkey is a good source of NAD.
As in eating turkey meat?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, salmon, liver. All contains high quantities of tryptophan. So tryptophan and niacin are two precursors for the body. It gets these two and it makes NAD from there. So, but it's ongoing. You don't have to, like I said previous, if you're fit, healthy and young, under the age of 30, without any conditions, you don't have to, no one should really need NAD, but there is a theory, looking at the predator response, that when we lived in caves, that some of us were genetically programmed to be NAD deficient. So at a certain time, these people, human beings who had this genetic imprint, had to be, they get anxious, they get nervous, they get agitated, and these were signs that these became the hunters in the cave. And these are the people who went to kill the animal. When you see, even now, when you see old films, the Maasai people, they kill the animal, and the first thing they eat and share is the liver.
The organ meat, yeah.
And it's almost like an alcoholic getting his drink, or a drug addict getting his hit, when you see these people eating the raw liver, because it's polluted with tryptophan. And then they wrap up the animal, they take it back to the cave, and everybody joins in, and they just sit and wait till the next time until the agitation and the anxiety arises. This is a theory which I can relate to with certain addicts, especially my own personal circumstances. I think I was probably programmed to be NAD deficient.
You even see that with predators nowadays. You watch the Discovery Channel, the lion makes a kill, and the first thing the alpha does is goes in and eats that, the liver or the heart, and off he heads then, yeah.
So, I mean, there is that theory, and there's a good paper written about it from a professor associated with University in Birmingham. I read it extensively some years ago, and I support that idea that there could be a natural NAD deficiency in some people, because some people benefit more in a profound way from NAD infusions than it's not everybody experiences the same profoundness of this therapy, but there is some people where it literally has an absolutely profound effect on, and these people could be these people have this genetic difference.
That's that subclinical group of people that I'm talking about, which Tom also just mentioned there. You know, there are a lot of things that we don't know, and in medicine we typically like to put people into boxes, pigeonholes, and that you need to fit in somewhere, you know. But there's a lot of people that falls out of that we need to hopefully over time going to get to a point where we can classify this and recognize them as NAD deficient people.
So for the listeners who now hopefully know a little bit more about NAD, if people want to learn more about this, I know both Tom and John, you're both very, very active and involved in promoting NAD and the effects. Are there resources that they should use, places they should go, websites they should visit that, in your opinion, will give them a better understanding of the benefits of this treatment, and maybe read some stories similar to your own, and kind of get a better understanding, a better feel for how this works?
Well, I mean, there's some mind-boggling science on the Google search pages about NAD. NAD is such a complicated molecule to talk about in detail. It's mind-blowing. So NAD Cell website, Tom's NAD Treatment Centre website, we contain In fact, Tom's got a fantastic animation of how NAD is responsible for some DNA repair work within the mitochondria, within the cells. But you need to be careful. I mean, there's good research generally available. But the more you dig deeper, the more complex it becomes, like most things. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of general information on Google pages.
So yeah, I mean, you can go to our website, nadtreatmentcenter.com. Also, I'm coming out with a book in the next few months. So you could be on the lookout for that. And then particularly for doctors, we'll be doing, we did the last NAD conference, and we're looking to put together the next NAD conference. And so just be tuned into that. If you want, you could, send me an email at tom@nadtreatmentcenter.com, and we could, invite you to the next NAD conference that we put on.
Brilliant. And Dr. Sam, for your own clients, where should they go to find out more information on your specific treatments, which include NAD, but also the regenerative and functional medicine?
If they go onto the nuacell.com website and go into IV performance, they would find the information there. From my clinical point of view, an approach to this is something interesting, perhaps for you as well, Tom, is that I'm involved more on a clinical side using stem cell-based therapies, as I said earlier. And my really inspiration came from the point that at some age, these even wonderful, great stem cell-based therapies do not deliver the same type of results that I would expect them to. So there's something in the cell, and that's what started my research into looking how to optimize the cell response. And that's how I finally decided, well, I have to have this in my clinic as part of my clinical work to optimize and prepare people for that. So I would love to work with you guys to see how can one optimize that and gather information to see people, if we can get to a point where we can optimize people, prepare them for procedures, and perhaps have a way later with good clinical data to actually illustrate the difference between it makes when you have a person that is in a good metabolic state with good levels of NAD and what the response to that wound healing cascade would be. At the moment it's theory. We can speculate, and it's nice to speculate, but it would be great one day to actually have data to back that up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great, Dr. Sam, having you here. It's always a privilege to have a professional doctor involved with us. I mean, I'm not a medical professional. I can only speak about my own personal clinical observation experience and just my experience over the years with this unbelievable molecule, which it is. So the more doctors come on board, Sam came through the stem cell route, the more credibility this treatment gets. I mean, I work with some real credible professional doctors here in central London who believe in this therapy. Only not so much what they've seen in data, but what they've seen with their own eyes has baffled them. It is quite a remarkable, baffling type of therapy. Don't ask me how it works in all cases, but it's really something else. So it's a privilege to have Dr. Sam take interest.
Absolutely. I'm not a doctor either, and this isn't medical advice, and you should certainly find someone like Dr. Sam who could look deeply into your health to see if NAD is something for you.
Yeah, I think patient selection is always important. Doesn't matter what you do. But this is a wonderful illustration how the world of science is linked together from a clinical background, from a scientific, from experience point of view, from the all together we make a team, and all together we deliver the result that's significant for the person that receives it. I was again now intrigued when Tom mentioned chronic fatigue. I think in general practice, when I was still in general practice, that possibly would have taken up possibly about 50% of my tired patients will come in and will say, I'm tired. Now, if I had to treat every one of them tired, I will never get to any other diseases. Right, so maybe this would be one day proven to be a simple way to start creating and generate energy through the science that we understand, where NAD can actually, let's call it, power up the sirtuins and all the mechanisms that we are now starting to discover in the science that explain to us these reactions that you guys experience yourself and that you see in your client base. How much of a fatigue factor would be visiting your clinic? If you say, look at your data that you gathered up there.
Gosh, I hate answering numbers. But, I would say, in the percentages don't add up. They're way over 100%. So 75% of our clients are coming in for addictions. We get people, we might get 30-40% coming in for psychological problems like depression and anxiety and things like that. And then we get probably another 30% coming in for chronic disease, which includes chronic fatigue. I mean, I would say it's a huge percentage.
More likely that all those conditions that you mentioned, that those people will possibly tick the box.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
are you fatigued?
30% come in for anti-aging. I mean, it's way over. You're seeing people with multiple problems and getting lots of different solutions. That's what we see. That's what the clinic sees clinically. So,
even the addicted clients. I mean, these people end up using alcohol and drugs for energy. A false energy, all may be it, but without it, they're energy deficient. I mean, an alcoholic just cannot raise a finger with lack of energy. Yeah. So even from the addicted population, there's chronic fatigue issues, which are restored.
There's a real expansion. I mean, NAD is just sort of it's been sort of a starting point. And as John was saying that, this infrared laser, the infrared light, we have that in San Diego as well. I mean, it increases NAD levels. There's an expansion into other things that could be used synergistically. And also just sort of, when patients will come in and they'll ask for other longevity therapies, things that they've read that reverses the aging process. It's one of the things that we're doing through my nonprofit is we are getting people's biological aging clocks. So there's different ways to test people's, get an actual number behind their age through various different methods. And it's very controversial. Some tests are liked more than others, depending on who you are and, if you're what type of scientist you are, what type of doctor. So we're looking at hundreds of different aging markers. And so because a lot of our clients are, as John said, they're very educated, and they not only know about NAD, but they also are talking about rapamycin and metformin and dasatinib, and they're talking about fasting, and they're so you're seeing people that are not only optimizing with NAD, but they're also trying to optimize, and it's new territory. I mean, it's a little bit it's a little bit frightening, actually. Some of the things that they're doing. I mean, some of these therapies are that they're doing there hasn't been a lot of validation behind them. So, but I mean, that's 20 years ago, people were doing the same thing with nootropics like paracetam, and then there was a lot of people that thought that was downright dangerous, and now it's just sort of par for the course with a lot of biohackers that are taking things like paracetam and alpha GP. I remember in alpha GPC, I remember reading that in a book that that we didn't know enough about it, and but now it's like, now we see a lot of functional medicine doctors just recommending supplements like that.
Yeah, I think there's two important points to pick up on there, just to wrap this up. But the first thing is the testing that you mentioned, and while some of these new tests might not be accepted in more mainstream medicine, I think anybody with any sort of kind of sense or cop on realizes that it's much better to have a whole battery of tests done and then draw the conclusion from that, rather than go into your doctor and have a simple blood test and they tell you this is what's wrong and they give you medication. So I think taking that kind of bigger picture view is always going to be more beneficial. So while some of the tests might be new and revolutionary and scary, personally I'd much prefer to go in and have a whole range of those tests done, and whether some of them are accurate or not, you get a much better picture. And then the same thing kind of applies. It's important to note, we've been discussing NAD here, but it is part of a bigger picture when it comes to health as well. And we've talked about IV infusions and oral treatments, and then lifestyle choices and diet and sleep and all these different things get kind of affected. So one of the kind of the pushbacks you kind of get when you speak about these treatments is that you shouldn't rely. I don't want my clients to throw their typical traditional treatments out the window and just focus on NAD because they heard a podcast or they read an article on it. It is very important for our listeners and anybody who's interested in this to do your own research, but to treat these treatments as part of an optimization of your health, a preventative approach, not just a magic bullet for treating specific conditions. On that point there, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. You mentioned the value of having Dr. Sam, but things like this don't move forward without pioneers in the field, and whether you're doctors or experience is massive, and stories are massive, and our listeners especially, they love to hear stories from people who are on the ground pushing this forward, who are pushing the conferences, who are setting up addiction centres, and who are growing this field. So everyone in the room here is a massive value and will really be instrumental, I think, in moving this into mainstream medicine. So just on behalf of myself and Dr. Sam and the podcast, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us on the conversation, and fingers crossed the first of many.
Thank you.
Thanks a million, guys.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about NAD or other types of IV or regenerative treatments, you can get in touch with us by email on info@humanregenerationproject.com or visit the NUACell website www.nuacell.ie. John Gillen and the NAD Cell Clinic in London can be found at www.nadcell.com, and Tom Ingoglia and the NAD Treatment Center in San Diego are at www.nadtreatmentcenter.com. If you enjoy these podcasts, please show us some love and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.